Get ready, because today we're going to talk about how to use suspense, mystery, and dramatic irony in order to keep your audience gripped. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. If you've been following my channel recently, you know that I've been reading the book Character by Robert McKee. It's a great book on this subject. It really takes a deep dive into what characters are, how they work within your story. It gives a lot of tips, practical advice on how to build characters. And if you're interested, I'll link it in the description below. But today I want to talk about something that is taught toward the end of the book, and it's something that often gets overlooked within various writing circles, and it's the subject of how a character's experience relates to the audience's experience. Now, what I mean by this is that characters experience a story as if it were their life. They just go moment by moment, going through the story. They don't have any special knowledge outside of the story world or any special knowledge about future events that may happen. Now, on the other hand, the audience, they may be right alongside that character. They may be experiencing events right alongside the character as they happen moment to moment. However, audiences may have knowledge that the characters don't, or audiences may be lacking knowledge that some characters do have. And that's where things can get interesting, and that's where you can incorporate different storytelling techniques like suspense, mystery, and dramatic irony. That's what I'm going to go over today, and I also have some examples toward the end of this video where we'll discuss how to use all three together to get the most out of a story. But first, let's talk about suspense. Suspense is when both the characters and the audience are in the same moment. Immediate events impact both. And both know the past and present, but the future is uncertain. And because of this, the audience is wondering, how are things going to turn out? What's going to happen next? Is this person going to die? Is this person going to succeed? And so on and so on. Now, mystery is different from suspense because you have a character or characters who are ahead of the audience in some way. They know a secret that the audience wants to know. If you think about a traditional mystery story, right at the beginning we find a dead body and the audience is wondering, okay, well, who's the killer? How did the killer carry out the murder? What was the murder weapon? All kinds of questions that pop up in regards to the mystery of what happened. You have a reader following events, trying to learn what happened, who did something, or how it was done. They're trying to learn what some other character or characters already knows. And then the third type of strategy is dramatic irony. And this is when the audience is ahead of the characters in some way. Oftentimes the audience will know future events before the characters do. If you think about the movie Casino, it opens up with Robert De Niro's character getting into his car, he starts the ignition, and a bomb goes off. And then the rest of the movie goes back in time, we pick up, we learn how Robert De Niro's character got to this point. And that's the key thing about dramatic irony. It pushes the question, how and why did a character get to this point? Or how and why did a character do what I already know they did? And in some types of stories, it works automatically. For instance, in historical fiction, if you think about the movie Titanic, we know that the ship is going to sink. We know that the characters on this ship are doomed. And because of that, we're more invested because we know that they're living the final hours of their lives. Another time when dramatic irony works is when you have prequels. If you think about the Star Wars prequels, the question you go into those movies with is, how and why did Anakin Skywalker become Darth Vader? And then one final thing to keep in mind with dramatic irony is that it can work well in stories with multiple plot lines. Because if you have two separate plot lines and something happens in the first plot line that the characters in the second plot line aren't aware of, that can create some interesting scenarios where the audience is rooting for something to happen or rooting for something not to happen. For instance, think about the original Star Wars movie when Luke and his group are headed to Alderaan, and then they cut to Princess Leia's plot line where Alderaan is blown up, the whole planet is destroyed. That all of a sudden creates a scenario where the audience is wondering, well, how is Luke's team going to respond to all this? All right, now let's talk about using all three of these strategies in a story. And it's a great thing to have all three if you can, because suspense is great because it adds immediacy and energy to your stories. But you also want mystery there because mystery can help balance out that suspense by keeping the audience curious about what characters are hiding. And then, of course, you want dramatic irony because if you do have time jumps or you have multiple plot lines, that can add different levels of meaning and interest to your storylines. But I'm going to focus on some examples from John Wick, Fight Club, and the original Star Wars movie. We'll start with John Wick. And John Wick opens with a scene that contains all three strategies. Right off the bat, we get dramatic irony because the opening scene is a flash forward. It shows him in this beaten state, he's bloody, he's alone, and the audience is wondering, how and why did he end up here? And then we also get some mystery elements here. We ask the question, who is this guy? Who is this John Wick? Is he a mobster? Is he an accountant? What's going on here? And then there's also suspense here because we're wondering, is John Wick going to survive? And the use of these strategies in this opening scene is very important because John Wick starts off as a pretty slow movie. It's all about getting us invested in his character and his backstory. And it's not until a little later where we get the suspense kicking in again when we see the Russian mob trying to bully John Wick at the gas station. And then later on, the suspense kicks in even further when we ask the question, will John Wick get revenge? Fight Club is another movie that opens up with all three. Right off the bat, we get dramatic irony. We see that the narrator is at the mercy of Tyler Durden. There are these explosives about to detonate. How and why did this happen? The audience is wondering, and we're going to get the full backstory on what led up to this point over the course of the next 2.5 hours. And then suspense is at play here as well because we have a ticking time bomb. We have the bombs about to go off, 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Time is ticking down. What's going to happen? And then there's also mystery here because we're wondering, who are these two guys? Why are they here? And then there's the mention that all of this has something to do with Marla Singer. And then the question is, well, who is Marla Singer? And then I want to take a look at the original Star Wars movie. This one opens up with a scene that gives us suspense and mystery. We don't get dramatic irony until a little later, but in that opening scene, there's suspense because we're wondering what's going to happen to that tiny transport ship that's being chased by that massive Star Destroyer. What's going to happen to the princess? What's going to happen to these droids? And then there's mystery here because what did the princess just hide inside that R2 unit? What is she trying to sneak off the ship? And this opening scene allows the storytellers to create dramatic irony later on. And that's because we know that there are deadly galactic stakes here. We know that whatever was just transported off the ship in that R2 unit is going to play a major role in this massive conflict. But for Luke, when he and his family purchased the droids, they just think they purchased a couple random droids. They don't know what the stakes are just yet, and that dramatic irony adds a lot of meaning to Luke's plotline. So I hope this helps. And the key thing to remember is that what your characters experience may or may not be different from what the audience experiences. And how you manage this balance between the two can create some unique and interesting stories. Question of the day, what is your favorite movie, and does it incorporate all three of these strategies? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my novels. Also, be sure to check out my other videos. Hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. Share this video with a friend. And as always, remember to keep on writing.